Well, hello, everyone. I am just honored to share something with you that I recently had an experience in doing with a professional named Diana Romanoff. And she has a show, a podcast show called Divorce Like a Boss. And recently I was a guest on her show talking about co-parent counseling and just struggles that co-parents go through and the issues that co-parents are having in counseling or even just in the co-parenting relationship. And so one of the things I love most about this is that as Diana put this out there for the community to see, it received more than 90,000 views on YouTube. And I just thought, man, our listeners would really benefit from getting to hear this interview that I got to do with her, and wanting to make sure that you had the opportunity to hear the conversation that we got to have. So I'm thrilled to bring this to you. I'm excited that you'll get the opportunity to hear this conversation. Diana is not easy on me. I'm going to go ahead and let you know that now. She will jump into role play with me. She will ask me hard questions. Diana is not opposed to asking me things that are very difficult and probably things that are on your mind as well. So I hope you get a kick out of it as much as I did. I loved doing that with her in that show, and I'm just excited to bring that to you all. And I look forward to sharing more with you. Keep moving forward, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Today I have a special guest, Michael Flores. Sometimes you need co-parenting counsel when you're going through a lot of custody-related problems and or therapist. And sometimes the judge says you gotta go and have some sessions.
Welcome to the Beyond Divorce Embracing Change podcast. My name is Michael Flores, and I will be your host while we explore the complex journey of divorce with empathy, insight, and practical knowledge. Whether you're contemplating separation, in a divorce, or looking for support post-divorce, our episodes provide expert guidance, stories, and strategies to help you through every step of the process. We are actual therapists, helping clients who sit on our couches every day through their difficulties of divorce. You are not alone. Join us as we delve in and find solutions that give you hope again. We're glad you're here.
This podcast is not intended to replace legal or personal help. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
So, Michael, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much. I'm actually a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Texas, the big state. I know you're in a big state too. And I'm actually central in Fort Worth. So I have Fort Worth and Dallas. If you know where Dallas is, we're right connected to Dallas. We're one of the contingent counties right next to it. And so we serve everyone in Texas. I've been as far as Odessa to work with families. I've been there's counties I can't even tell you I knew existed until I got into this work, but I think we've been in almost 9 counties total, somewhere between 7 and 9 counties. We're serving families in high conflict divorce and been doing that for about 13 years. Yes, we've had parents that actually reside in California, and I had one dad that would fly in to do sessions here because they have to be in Texas. The licensing board requires that they are actually in Texas. If they're in Texas, you can serve them. If they're outside of Texas, then we can't serve them because they have to be a resident of the state or they have to be in the state. And so that was one of the issues. So the parent was actually in California, the child and the other parent were here. And so when the father needed to be in the sessions, he would fly in, which was really awesome. I thought that was a huge commitment to the therapeutic process. But I've had that on, I think there's been 3 I've had that were actually California residents, but would fly into Texas to work with me.
But it only if it's court-appointed situation. So if someone in California says, hey, I really like this podcast and I would like to work with Michael on our co-parenting, they would be able to do co-parenting.
Right. So I couldn't do therapy with them per se, but something like a coaching meeting. So if we were talking about, what their situation is, how some different ways they might consider navigating it, that's a possibility. I just can't do therapy with them. One of the better ways to get my work, if they want my work specifically, is they can use my courses. So I do have a course that I've created called Countering Alienation, And they can find that on our website at brighterpossibilitiesfc.com. And that will help them navigate a little bit about what they would learn in therapy anyway. I've had people that aren't dealing with alienation that feel that the course is helpful because it teaches them a way to communicate with their spouse, their ex-spouse, with their children, so they can preserve those relationships to the best of their ability.
What does that entail, this alienation course?
Oh, that's great. So the alienation course, I believe, is six. There's 6 modules and about 27 lessons, and it has a 31-page workbook that's specific to their situation. So I will actually give different ways they can navigate their own situation so that it's personal to them. And we did that on purpose because not everyone fits in a box. Not everyone's situation is the same. And so this actual course is designed to help anyone who chooses to take it, and they can actually tailor it to their own situation. And so that's what they get from this course. It's pretty extensive. The lessons themselves are real bite-sized. I think the longest lesson is about 10 minutes, maybe 13 minutes long. So they can take them in a sequence, whatever pace they feel is appropriate for them. Once they purchase the course is a lifetime access. They can retake it anytime they want. There's no additional fees for that. And as long as it exists, it'll be there for them to go back to. And so we did that because we wanted to make sure that people always had the opportunity to go back and continue to hone in on the skills that they're learning from the course.
What particular issues is that ideal client for that course is facing?
Oh, what a great question. If you believe that you are being alienated or you get the sense that that could be the case, that's a good course for you. If you're the type of person, though, that's trying to prove that you're being alienated, I would not take the course. The course will feel like a flop to you because we didn't create it to prove that alienation is happening. We actually are using it to train you on how to counter it if in the event it is occurring. And so if you're just a parent who's trying to preserve your relationship with your kid, how to learn how to better dialogue with your child, how to counter alienation if it's happening with your co-parent, if you think your co-parent's poisoning the well, that's kind of sometimes the terms we hear around here. If you think that that's happening, then this course is definitely going to be what you want to look into.
And when you say teaching how to counter it, where there be tools, what to say, what to do, when or how to recognize?
Yes. So that's a great question. The tools that they learn is really how to respond. The problem a lot of times that people have is they try to control. They respond and they actually react more than they respond to alienation. And so by reacting to it, they actually push the child into the alienator more. And so they actually create the opposite effect of what they're trying to do. So the course is actually designed on how to respond to it if in the event's happening. You know, when kids have too much information and one parent is overshared with them and the kid starts coming to the parent and starts asking questions or starts making these claims that may not be true, the parent doesn't know what to do with that. They're just like caught. They feel like they're caught in a trap. And so this course will train you on how to respond. You'll learn things like 5-sense language. You'll learn things like forced empathy, which is something that I didn't create. Actually came from a FBI negotiator who created. His name's Chris Voss. I think he does a great job. And so there's things like that that you can use in your own communication with your child that allow you guys to collaborate in a way that preserves their relationships. The whole goal is to protect your relationship with your child. I mean, that's really what the goal of the course is aimed at doing.
And I noticed in my profession that when clients are going through divorce and they have children and they have custody disputes, it's almost 99.9% when the children are being affected by
Yes.
that, to say the least, if not alienated. And so they come home and they said, well, Dad said, he's still waiting for you and see how your relationship with your new husband is going to work out. And children get involved. And so when they take this course, when a parent who is feeling that the other parent is alienating would have tools, not legal
Yes.
tools, but mental, emotional tools, how to communicate with the child and also with the other parent.
Right. You know, what would happen in a situation, using your example, so you're the parent and the kid's coming to you and says, dad's waiting to see. So let's pretend I'm the mom and says, dad's waiting to see how this relationship with your husband's going to work out. What that parent might do normally is go, why is your dad saying those things to you? Why would he? And so they get real defensive. Your dad shouldn't be saying that kind of
But
stuff.
it's not true. And, or start
Correct.
getting into the topic and content.
Right. And so the kid naturally pulls back and goes, uh-oh, problem, right? So they don't know what to do with it. So now they may go back to dad and be like, mom got mad at me, or mom got upset that what from whatever said, or the kid just stops talking and the kid isolates, and now we think the kid's depressed. And so what that parent can do instead, and one of the things they may learn in the course, is they may say something like, it sounds like your dad has an interest in how my marriage is going. Is that something I need to talk to your dad about? And the kid goes, I guess so. And you go, okay, it sounds like a parent issue. Why don't I talk to your dad and see if we can figure that out? You just remove the kid from being in the middle. Make sense? And the kid's now verified this is an adult issue, right? Not a kid issue. So now the kid doesn't feel like they have to worry about it. Make sense? You just protected them. And just by using a 5-sense word, it sounds like your dad's concerned about my adult marriage. And is this, and then you can ask the kid curiously, does this sound like something the adult should talk about? So you see how you're actually sending the message to the kid, this is really an adult matter, without telling the kid goes, oh yeah, this is an adult kid,
Can I
So-
put you on the spot? I had a couple situations where
Sure.
I even didn't know what to tell the client, but the judge confirmed. So there was a situation where a father was being supervised with
Okay.
2 little children, 4-year-old and 3-year-old. And it has been going on for a while, about 3 to 6 months. And one of the 4-year-old says to dad, "Hey, dad, when are we going to have sleepovers?" Because the child sees the supervisor and a couple hours a day, every day, 5 days a week. And the fatal mistake that dad said was, that's up to the mom.
Mm. And the judge didn't like that.
And the judge didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious if there are any answers that would be appropriate from a non-alienation perspective.
So to make sure I understood, you're saying that the child wants to actually have sleepovers with dad, but dad's on supervised visits.
Correct.
Yeah. I think dad says, man, that's so exciting to hear that you want to spend more time with me. Right now, mom and I are trying to figure out how best to work that out. And as soon as we have an answer to that, I'll let you know.
Cool. Yeah. So basically removing the child and
Yeah.
not blaming the other parent. And
Yeah, there's no blame in that statement. There's no mom has control, I don't. There's no it's the court's fault. It's I'm so glad to hear you want to spend time with me. I'm assuming dad wants more time with his kid. So I would acknowledge that's awesome, kiddo. I'd love to spend more time with you, right? You're validating the kid's feelings, and especially when you align with it. And then the second thing you're doing is saying, that's something that's getting worked out from this side. Mom and I are getting that worked out, or right now there's someone in place to help us work that out. And as soon as it gets worked out, I'll let you know if it changes. And so the kid goes,
here's a
cool.
situation where we have 14-year-old who is no longer a 4-year-old and shows up again, similar situation, being supervised, and then, "Dad, what the heck is going on? Why are we being with this woman here who is supervising us? Why are you not living in the same household? What the heck?"
Right.
That's the teenage attitude.
Absolutely. And I think the first thing I'd do if I have a supervisor that's court appointed is I would let the supervisor handle a question that's about supervision, because you don't want to say something in supervision that's going to dock you, right? So you probably turn to the supervisor and go, is that something that you answer, or is that something I'm supposed to answer when it comes to supervision based on the kid's question?
And the supervisor says, "Well, I'm here as a silent observer. I'm not
Right.
going to answer any questions, so you deal with it."
Perfect. Because now that goes in the documentation. Now I'm protected to answer. And so then I think as the parent, I would say, thank you for the clarification. Supervision was something that was court ordered for us to do. And this is what the court has decided is in our best interest. And so this is where we're starting. But thank you for letting me.
Why?
Yeah, great question. That's as much as I can tell you at this time. If there's more information that I can share with you later, I'd love to get that to you. But at this time, this is as much as I can say. However, it sounds like, you can use the 5-sense language again, it sounds like you're hoping for more time that's not supervised.
Correct.
Yeah, and you say, that's wonderful. I'm interested in that as well, and that's something I'm trying to work out.
Wow. That's very
Yeah.
powerful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So it's validating their emotion, making sure you stay within your lane and you're not saying something you can't, but you're using the 5 sense language to validate the moment. See, the reason it works so well is because if you're wrong, you'll get corrected. So if I say, it sounds like you're really upset about this, and they're not really upset, they'll correct me and say, it's not that I'm upset, I'm just frustrated. But if I am correct, they'll say yes. And now there's an alignment. And now I can say anything I need to say because we've aligned that we're there. Make sense? It's a real nice way to validate someone.
Moving forward with out of this situation where both parents now unsupervised and the judge says, okay, well, now you gotta do your co-parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And usually in California, at least, the court says at least 12 sessions. And so here you are. Can you walk us through the process, specifically where there's potentially a situation where there's domestic violence restraining order, the other parent doesn't want to be on Zoom or in person in the same room? Are you at the end reaching agreements? What questions do you ask? So how, if I were to watch a trailer of an ideal co-parenting situation with light in the tunnel at the end, what would it look like?
Oh my gosh. You've gotten really good at your questions. So, going back to the original question that I understood was, if the court is ordering co-parent counseling and I was going to be doing that counseling with the co-parents, like, can I walk you, are you asking if I can walk you through that process of what that might look like, how that might sound?
The client is calling and says, hey, I got 12 sessions. I really like you. Let's do it. What do you need from us? What questions do we need to answer?
Perfect.
We need usually what they need is one parent doesn't want to talk, pretty pissed. That parent says, I want vacation, I want holiday, I want a really good schedule, and maybe I would like to relocate. That's
yeah, that sounds like a real case. In the co-parenting work what we like to do is we like to set the standard up front. We want them to know we're not investigators, we're counselors. People will assume the role of a counselor is to investigate and decide who's right and who should have what, because they're in the middle of a battle, right? They're in the middle of their own tug of war. So in co-parent counseling, we go, let's make sure we know why we're here. Let's make sure the roles are clear and the boundaries are already discussed up front. So what people experience with us is we put the parents in the room right from the get-go. And a lot of them don't like it. Like you said, there's domestic violence, there's history. But what we've learned is if the court is ordering you to co-parent and you're not willing to be in a room together, we already know where we're starting. We know we're starting in a not great place. Now, what we have done in the past is we've let parents come separately to start with the intention of knowing at some point we're going to have to do this together. Make sense? And so I had one mom, domestic violence issue. She was opposed to meeting with dad in person, but she was not opposed to doing it via telehealth, which is the version that we have like Zoom, like this. And it's done for HIPAA reasons. So telehealth was the option, and we did it that way. And we had great success with it. I think it was wonderful. I prefer to do it in person, but because of history and things like that, people need to have alternative routes of how to get there. Now, what I'll say is in the co-parenting counseling, that's really super important that they need to understand is it's always good to have the boundaries set up front, know what to expect, and to realize that there's two things always at play with co-parents. The lack of trust is the issue. They don't work together anyway. It's always the same. Now, how the lack of trust happened can be different, but that's always the bigger whole is I don't trust you. Okay. The second part of it is fear. It's the fear of future. It's the fear of hidden agendas. It's the fear of repeating the past with you. Like, I don't want to redo what I've done. That's why I got out. So those are the things that people come in with co-parenting. So if I can tackle those two things right away, you start having a lot more success with co-parents. So trust and fear, those are the two things that play into it all the time with co-parents.
So if one parent says, I don't trust you, and the other parent says, well, but we have to co-parent, and the parent who doesn't trust, how are you handling the parent who's not trusting?
How do I do that? How would you know if you couldn't? That's a question that you might hear me ask a parent who doesn't trust one. Let's say one parent doesn't have the trust issue, but the other parent does. I would ask the one that doesn't trust, how would you know if you could trust them? And sometimes they say, I don't know. And I say, well, when did you trust them? And they say, well, maybe the first couple of years of our marriage. What was different then? And so now I'm finding the pattern of how trust developed in the first place.
So sometimes they don't trust to leave the child with the other parent because they're afraid something will happen. For example, the other parent is drunk or
Yes.
negligent.
The problem that parents have, I'm so thankful to my clients. I'm so thankful to them, the people I've gotten to work with, because they've taught me this. It's the guilt. They get out of the marriage because it wasn't good. And they have their kid, and their kid still has to do visitation, but they're no longer in that environment with their kid. So they feel their kid is going to an environment that they can't protect them. And so that parent has a lot of guilt that they deal with because they can no longer be the person to protect the child from the person they got away from. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's the struggle those parents have. Yeah.
They have to give the child to that person that they were running away and potentially had restraining order.
Correct. Yep. That's our system. That's our system. And I get tasked with help people work through that fear and that pain so that both parents have the best opportunity to be a part of the child's life. And that's what we deal with all the time. That's why we call it high conflict, right? Because what parents don't realize, let's go back to the alienation piece. The parent who feels their kid is pulled away from them usually will claim they're being alienated. But the parent who's doing the so-called alienation is actually going to tell you they're protecting them. So we have this thing where we say there's a difference between protection and prevention. And so prevention looks like alienation, right? But the parent never says they're preventing, they say they're protecting. And so they're interchangeable. When I work with these parents together, I get them to define the difference, right? So if dad sees you preventing him from being a dad and you're protecting your child, right? How can dad know that it's protection, not prevention? What would need to happen so he could understand that? And I may ask dad that question. It sounds like mom wants to protect the kid. Are you interested in the kid's safety too? And usually dad goes, yeah, I am. And I said, so if she's trying to protect them, but it feels like she's preventing them from you, what would need to change in her approach so you would know it's about protecting the kid, not preventing you? And that's the kind of stuff I get into. So it's real deep. And you'd be surprised how much they work through. Fortunate or unfortunate, I was dealing with this in a case, and they ended up making up in the session. So the problem with making up was the ex-wife said to the husband, she wanted to reconcile with him. She said, if I do this, I'm going to lose my family, because her parents were helping to pay for it, the divorce. So if she goes back to her parents and says, hey, never mind, I'm calling off the divorce, I want to stay married, she was afraid to lose her own family in that. And we had to talk through that too. So there's so many dynamics that come to play in divorce that people miss. And so hopefully your listeners are hearing this and going, this guy seems like he's, because I've had a lot of stories and I've seen so many things, people working things out, people reconciling marriages, co-parents firing me because they don't need my work anymore. They're like, hey, we got this, we're done. I've had co-parents eventually get to a point where they've worked together and they split, and then the kid came back and saw me as an adult because they don't want to repeat the parent stuff. I've had kids who rejected their parents, and then as I did the work, they never reconciled as kids. But then I have one, she's a basketball star in a college, and she's like 22 now. I think she's almost graduating, but she reconciled with her father. And I think she was 15 when I met her. She's 22, and her and her dad have a great relationship, but it didn't happen when she was a kid. It happened as an adult because the seeds that were planted in the therapy that dad did with her. And then now as an adult, she's come back, and it's pretty awesome. She's a really cool kid. She was one of my favorite clients, and I think she knows that because I've told her before. So, cool kid. But she made a full circle as an adult. We've seen a lot.
Right. You and I were in the profession when people come to our office. Usually, things have broken down potentially without return, although some happy stories have a place.
Right.
You're writing a book about a positive side. Can you talk about your book?
Yeah. So a couple of things we're doing. We created a podcast. You were on that podcast. I was so glad to have you as a guest. We created a podcast a little over a year ago, that really goes into all these dynamics with working with families. And like, if you couldn't work with me directly, podcast might be the best place to start. And then the course is also there for you. And then I went another level and I wrote a book. But the first book I wrote, and I'm writing a second, but the first book I wrote is really about the questions I have found to become most powerful working with high conflict families. It didn't have to be divorce. It's just all the years of experience pull into one and saying, what are probably the best 50 questions I've ever asked someone? And so I wrote the book with all the questions in there. The power of those questions is listed after that. And then the stories that coincide with the intervention I did using those questions. And so it's a small read. It's not a huge book. You probably could read that on a plane ride. It's going to be audio version. It's the editor's still finishing it, but audio version of the book. There'll be paperback, so they'll be able to receive it. It's called One Question Away, 50 Therapeutic Questions That Change Everything. So
I'll get that book for sure.
like continue on. Yeah, it'll be great. So yeah.
I'm curious when people are listening right now, they're wondering, well, if there is a chance we will reconcile, is there anything right now that we can do before it's too late? Because sometimes, people say things to each other they cannot take back anymore.
Yes.
They get frustrated because they're upset. Would you be open, or are you open for these type of conversations? Meaning, are you accepting clients who are not divorcing, but they're noticing there are co-parenting issues? And what are the little flags that are not too red, but sort of yellow, that they would see, notice, thank to your guidance, to say, okay, now we got to talk before it's too late?
The greatest thing is if your spouse is holding you in contempt, like like there's eye rolling. You see a lot of this, you start getting to a place where you're moving into the wrong direction. I think John Gottman talks about this, and these four, he calls them the four horsemen. And if you see any of these four horsemen, they're predictors of divorce. And so I would encourage people to look at that, go into that. I'm not super trained in the four horsemen, but I will say that I agree with the research they've done and what they have found. And so those would be the yellow flags, right, that could lead into the red. And one of the things I heard someone say, they were at an event, and this lady had been married almost 60 years. And I think somewhere in their 50 something years or something like that. And so someone asked her, what would be the best advice you could give someone to be able to make a marriage last as long as you have? And her response was amazing. She said, everything is forgivable. And I thought that was tough. I mean, when you think, is everything really forgivable? In reality, yes, everything is forgivable. If not, we don't get heaven. I mean, Jesus taught us everything's forgivable. It doesn't mean you will forgive. It doesn't mean it won't be hard to forgive, and it doesn't mean you'll forget. But everything is ultimately forgivable. And if people really love, we used to have this. Well, we have a saying here, and you have to love the child more than you hate each other, right? And this came from a judge. She said you have to love this child more than you could hate each other. And that hate and that hurt is so bad. You can't hate what you didn't love. You know what I mean? So if you find that you kind of hate your spouse, you hate your ex, you can't do that if you didn't love them at some point, if you didn't care. And what's happened is the hurt has gotten so deep, and the wounds were so exposed and open, and the vulnerability was probably taken advantage of, that you fear letting yourself be vulnerable. You become cynical as a way of protecting yourself. Make sense? But that cynicism is what's preventing you to heal. So the thing you do to protect you is the thing that's keeping you from what you want ultimately. And people don't realize that. And my wife used to say this too, is sometimes the opposite is the medicine. Sometimes doing the opposite of what you're doing is the medicine to the thing that you need.
Oh,
yeah.
It's similar to if you do the same thing over and over again and it's a different result as insanity. So to get out of that cycle, you do the opposite.
Right. So that's actually, I think, a quote that's coined with Einstein. And Einstein had another quote that I use in therapy. I love it. And it is, no problem can be solved with the same thinking that created it.
I heard that. Yeah.
Yes. And I love that because what he's saying is, think about that. If every problem we experience is actually derived from the way we think about it, then that means we're creating the problem because of our own way of thinking. So no problem can be solved with the same thinking that created it. The way we think about the problem is what influences the problem to be in its place. We have to change how we look at it. We have to change perspective, and that's what the course does. That's what therapy is aimed at doing, is going, hey, is there an alternative way of doing this? Because if there wasn't, no therapy would work. Make sense? There's always an alternative.
I'm curious when people are so opposite of what they want. For example, one parent wants to relocate. I just had in the last couple months
Yes.
2 relocation cases. And I'm sure judges hate that because it's black and white, right? To decide. They have to assume, at least in California, there's this Islam Moshe case where when one parent says, I'm relocating, it's assumed that they are going to relocate. The court cannot say you have to stay. That's the right to relocate. And then the question becomes, is it in the best interest of the child to stay with the other parent or to go with the relocating parent? I am at awe how to even start this conversation. Did you have experience with relocating parents and
Yes.
what are the challenges?
When a parent has come to me and says, hey, I'm thinking about, I got a job offer in another state or whatever, and I'm going to be moving, or I'm remarrying and my fiance actually lives in another state and I'm going to be, we're not going to live apart. And so I've made the decision that I would rather move there. The schools are better. They always have a reason, right? The schools are better. This is better. And so I've had that issue, and I'll tell you what I did. I'll tell you a specific case actually. So it was California of all things. It was LA. So this mom comes in, dad and mom co-parent very well. No histories of issues with co-parenting, at least when they started. And dad is remarried and everyone gets along, and 2 beautiful little girls. And they're under 10, by the way. I don't work a lot with 10 and younger. Our team does, but I'm typically best with 10 and older. But in this particular case, they asked me to do it, and they wanted me to interview these kids. Mom was going to relocate to LA. So what she did, and dad was really upset about this, mom took the girls on a trip to LA, and they got to meet this fiance. And mom took them to these schools to show them the schools that they'd be attending. Yeah, took them to the beach, said, hey, look, you can go to the beach. We have a beach now. And dad knew that it was really a design to influence them to want to move, right? But dad was here in Texas. And so the judge didn't know what to do. The judge had they can interview the kids at a certain age. Usually I think it's 12 and older in our state. But in this particular case, I don't know if the judge did interview the kids or not, but they did send them to me to do an interview with them. And I remember looking at these 2 kids and I said, has this topic of moving come up with you? And both the little girls just kind of sat there quietly and kind of went like this. And I said, have you ever lived anywhere else besides here? And they said, no. And has someone asked you to pick? And they said, yeah. And I said, if you had to pick, what would you choose? And they just went like this. And I said, when you're with mom, do you miss your dad? Yes. When you're with dad, do you miss your mom? And they said, yes. And I said, it sounds like you would rather your mom and dad figure out what to happen. And either way, you'll be okay, but you're going to miss them both. So if you're in California, you're going to miss dad anyway. But if you're in Texas, you're going to miss mom. But as long as mom and dad figured it out and agreed on what they wanted for you, are you going to be okay? And they both looked at me and tears well up in their eyes and they said, yes. I called the attorneys, got releases, of course, from the clients, called the attorneys and said, hey, this is not a kid issue. And trying to figure out what's best for the kids, it's not their problem. They love both their parents. They miss both their parents when they're with the other one. It sounds like the parents need to figure out what to do. I think what ended up happening is the judge, I think, ruled that since mom was moving away, the kids aren't going with mom because mom's choosing to leave. Makes sense? Like, I understand you have
in relocation cases, someone choosing
to
leave. Yeah.
Someone's choosing to leave. And so like if you're going to leave and I hear that you think it's better for the kids to go with you, you're also taking them away from the parent that's here. And so a lot of the judges are like, you have to give me really good reason why these kids would be better off going away from this parent, because you're lifting your life up. That doesn't mean you get to take your kid's life too. Makes sense? Yeah. And so I think that case ended with the kids actually resided here. and they visited mom in California. Mom could come in here and visit them, but I think mom got a lot more access. If she was here in Texas, she could see them a lot more. But if she was in California, the kids were going to California. Mom had to cover the expense. They would only go out there usually during the holidays, so they wouldn't miss school. But that's a relocation case that I had. Um, and those are hard ones because I can hear both sides of that. I don't get to decide what happens ultimately as a counselor, but I definitely talk through it with them on how is this really in your best interest of your child? This relocation.
You just did a mini custody evaluation because
probably. I hope not, but probably.
In a couple of my cases, that's exactly what the custody evaluator said after interviewing everyone for a few months. And that's typically the case.
Yes.
Of course, there's domestic violence or something like that, but that's it.
Do you want to know what kids tell us they really want from their parents? It's really simple. We want them to get along. Okay, get along. Be consistent, right? Because consistency to them feels like safety, right? And when I'm with you, make time for me. Because a lot of parents do this, right? They're like on their phone, and the kid comes and says something, and the parent goes, "Yeah, sure," instead of giving them their undivided attention. And so kids just want time as love to a child. If you make time for me, you love me. If you're consistent, I'm secure, right? And if two of you can work things out, and when you disagree, but y'all can come to an agreement, I know I'm okay. I don't have to pick. Kids always feel they have to choose, and it's just innate in them. And I tell them all the time, if you didn't have to choose, what would that be like for you? And I've had kids say things like, I feel like I could come up for air from underwater. I feel like I would be able to breathe. I feel like I would finally be able to sleep, or I would have peace. You know what I mean? And so what parents are doing in these cases is the kid is struggling and they're blaming each other for the child's struggle, not realizing they play a role in that. Makes sense? And that's where
the child is mirroring their anxiety.
The child is always mirroring the family system. So that's a therapy trick. If you want to know what's happening inside your family, just look how the kid's responding, and that the kid will show you what the system's doing. Make sense? Yeah. It's so simple as a therapist because we just go, how's the kid responding? Well, the kid's responding this way. That's what's happening in their family system. Make sense?
In my cases, a lot of the times the court orders child therapy, but child therapy alone is not going to help.
Correct.
If the child is mirroring both parents, then both parents need to go to their own individual therapy or co-parenting therapy.
We family therapy. You said it, Dinah. You're like one of my favorites already. People don't realize it's a system. You have to engage the system if you intend on helping the child. There's so many therapists that are child focused and they leave the parents out. And so all they're doing is teaching a kid how to cope. Cope is just like, hey, I know it hurts, but let's learn how to deal with it, right? I know it's poking you, but let me teach you how to hold your breath so it doesn't poke you so bad. That is not what kids like. That's why the kids don't like therapists, right? You have to engage the system. You have to talk to the reunifying parent, the non-reunifying parent, the co-parent, right? Relationship, the kid and individual parent relationship. It's a system. The whole thing is a system. And when the therapists do that, they create real change, right? Because they're engaging the entire process.
How to change the inner dialogue or the paradigm of a parent who is listening and thinks, I don't need a therapy. I don't need co-parenting counseling. That's his or her fault. They're alleviating the child. They're doing it. And they go, what is inside of them that needs to change? And what voice would you sort of the alternative sentence you would give them to say to themselves, even though they don't like the other parent?
Great question. I think I would give them a memory more than a sentence. I would say, do you love this kid? And I'm sure they'll say yes. And I'll say, you love this kid a lot. Yeah. Would you do anything for this kid if you knew it meant love? Yep. Okay. Half of the reason this child exists is because of the other person you despise. You don't get to love this kid the way you think you do if this other person didn't help you have them. So as much as you despise them, as much as you think it's them or their fault, You only get to love this thing because they were half involved in it. Without them, you don't get the kid. So in my opinion, you're not doing it for you. That's the sentence. This isn't about you anymore. You did what you wanted to do. You got divorced. That's what was, either you got divorced, it was your divorce or theirs, but the marriage went this way. That's done, right? You're the adult. You can build whatever life you want now as a result. The child didn't get to choose any of it, right? They didn't choose to come into your family. They didn't choose for the divorce. And so you don't do it for you, right? It's an old saying, all pain and suffering starts with selfishness. Like if you go way back into every single, in history, all pain and suffering started with selfishness. What do we think greed is? Greed is selfish, right? Gluttony is selfish. All these 7 deadly sins typically deal with something about myself. And so the alternative is selflessness. So the sentence is, when I quit making it about me, right, and make it about my family, and my kid is my family, and that other parent is their family too. That's when you can start changing it. It doesn't mean that I agree what they've done. It doesn't mean that, you might have gotten hurt, abused, cheated on. There's so many things that can happen. We have this thing here that we call the 5 pillars. So divorce here is money, sex, kids, psychological, right, or emotional issues. And then the last one's typically substance abuse. So most people that are divorcing for one of those 5 reasons. It makes sense?
Yeah.
And a lot of those are selfish, right? Whether they're the sex, the money. Remember, I told you they come from something about me trying to. And so when they're getting bitter and they become hatred, this hatred comes up. They all think about themselves so much that they lose track of what's the bigger picture. And that's what I've seen is, they shrink things down about what about me, and that's when the problems start. And when both parents are doing that, when they're like, "What about me? What about me?" That poor kid is just getting ripped.
Another inner dialogue I hear some of my clients might think is, well, what's the purpose of co-parenting counseling? This person is not going to change anyway. Why would I waste time and money to do and go through that?
Mm-hmm. Well, and so my response to that, because I've had a parent say that to me before, is I would say, I agree that you can't make them do anything different or change, but you can decide how to respond. And if I can help you learn how to better respond to an individual who is doing that, who's going to benefit from your ability to respond effectively? Who's the beneficiary of that? And he go, the child. And I said, in that way, you're here. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't have a child. Why would you sit on my couch? Why would you do co-parenting? Why would the court order it if you didn't have a kid? The court ordered it because, one, I don't get every court order. So number one, they must see something in you that's possible. And number two, the child deserves it. It's not about you anymore.
I feel any parent who is struggling with custody visitation holiday without a court order would be benefiting from at least starting some co-parenting counseling.
I'm not in disagreement. I have some of the best counseling I've ever done. There's a really amazing judge here. And when she gets people, it's their first time to go to court. And I don't know how this judge does it, but she must hear something in the way they're dialoguing or the way that things are being presented and what the requests are from the petitioner. And then she hears the respondent, of course. And then I don't know how she discerns this, but she sent people to me and says, I don't want to do anything in this. I don't want to make any decisions yet until you go and see a counselor. And I want you to talk through some things. And that was the case I told you where they reconciled. Yeah, the judge saw it and court ordered him to co-parent counseling before she started making any decisions or rulings. So the only ruling she had was, I just want you to go to therapy first. Start that, and let's reset this for another hearing. And I think I did it in about 2 months. I saw them, I think 3 or 4 times in 2 months, and they reconciled. And so it became from co-parenting counseling into marital counseling. And so I had them go to a different counselor because that was outside of my role. I was court ordered to do co-parenting counseling, and that wasn't necessary anymore. They were working on their marriage. And so, yeah, if people would start there, Diana, if people would just say, hey, maybe we start with a counselor, or let's do a good divorce, which would be Let's go talk about divorce with a professional who deals with divorce about how we can do this in a way that preserves our children, right? And helps them. I've had 2 cases like that. So the attorneys referred them. They hadn't gone to court, came to see me, and they said, we're here because we're divorcing. We haven't even started the process yet, but we don't know how to do this to help our kids. And I saw, this is awesome. I said, cool, I can't wait to help you. And so what I did is I interviewed the kids, and I already knew the kids knew that mom and dad were going to divorce. And I remember asking them, I said, how would you know that this divorce was in your best interest? I asked the kids. And they said, well, we wouldn't have to change schools. Mom and dad would get along. And they gave me a list. And so when I met the parents again, I just gave them the list. I said, here you go.
That hits home, because if I were that parent, I would be, okay, guns down.
That's right. Holster the guns. That's right. And by the time we get them, they have already not only fired shots, but someone's been severely wounded, maybe bleeding out. I mean, that's about the time we get them. And so, yeah, holstering their gun is fearful because they're always thinking they're under attack. That's the issue with parents, is they're always thinking they're under attack by the other parent. And I'm not saying they're not. They could be. But when you stay in a defensive stance that long, you can't develop solutions. You're not trying to develop solutions. You're trying to defend. You're protecting. You can't play offense and defense at the same time. So the best offense, right, is to holster the guns, which actually becomes the best defense too. Because if the other parent's trying to hurt you and you put your guns away, it becomes really easy for them to see that, right? I mean, as an attorney, the attorneys will say, do less so they'll do more, and then I can tell you what they're doing. Make sense? But when you become super defensive, you're actually blocking the path for me to see what the other parent is doing. If they're doing something wrong, I can't see it because you're playing too much defense. And all I hear is the squeaky wheel. Make sense?
Wow, yeah, that's exactly what and sometimes our parents are, we're in wartime.
Yes. Yes.
I'm like, take a break. Go to a counselor, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're going to cut people that didn't hurt you, and it's your children. And your children will play that out. They'll bleed out on other people that never hurt them. And that's what's sad. I see kids have trouble at school and trouble with friends, trouble in relationships, all because they got cut by the 2 people they were supposed to trust and love, which were their parents. But because their parents couldn't do it, the kid got stuck.
And then they repeat the cycle of their own relationship
all the time.
For a dime.
Yeah, all the time.
With the parents.
Yep. That's why I told you that 22-year-old kid had come to see me, and he told me, I don't want to repeat what my parents did. That's why he came to therapy as an adult. He's like, I'm just
a smart kid.
Uh-huh. Well, he was an awesome kid. He very smart. He thanked me first for helping him when he was a child. And he said, I don't make a lot of money, but I know you don't take insurance. And so I'm willing to pay out of pocket because I don't want to go to anyone else. You know my family, you know where I come from. You knew me as a kid, and I'm currently dating a woman, and I want to marry her. But I find myself, like, when I get really upset or something happens, like we're not agreeing on something, I'm turning into my parents, and I don't want to be like them because I saw what happened to them, and I don't want to lose her. And man, I got tears in my eyes. I said, then kiddo, let's get to work. He did not want to repeat it. And you're right. Kids are the system, and they will play the system out, and it will show up later. Those kids that you think are avoiding it, like they go get real busy. We call them avoiders, but the kids that go get real busy with school and, sports and whatever else it may be, they're avoiding the problem, but it doesn't mean they're not carrying it. And as they become adults, it shows up again in their own relationships. Happens all the time. And it's sad, real sad.
But therapy can help.
Therapy is always so what I would encourage, if you're not working with me, make sure this person has a background in family therapy. There is a difference. Family therapists are trained to work with systems, and you have to have the models they use are systemic. So there's like 3 different waves of counseling. You have the psychoanalysts, which are individual psychology. And then you have the behaviorists and the cognitive therapists. They can do family therapy, but they're really that model was designed to work with individuals. That makes sense. But then there was a 3rd wave of family therapy. where people were learning systems, right? And it started with it started with I'm trying to think of his name now. His name slipped my mind. That we called him the father of family therapy. What he did is he studied tribes, and he learned in one tribe the woman was the dominant, in another tribe the man was the dominant. He baffled him, and so what he ended up doing is he ended up studying them to figure out how they created this. Like, how did this dynamic get created in these certain tribes? And part of his studies is what developed family therapy. And so then we had a plethora of therapists working with families in creating theoretical models and approaches that we use today to help family systems. So that would be my encouragement, is make sure that your therapist is trained or has training in family systems work.
Gosh, I heard the sentence, recognizing the problem is 70% of the solution. So if someone was able to show the system, this is your system, and this is what you're doing.
Yes.
That's holy, yeah.
Yes. Well, I have the page somewhere. I don't have it with me, but we created a family map. It's a diagram to do exactly what you described. So it shows the roles our kids are playing in the divorce, the flexibility or inflexibility of the parents, the relationship between dad and kid, between mom and kid, and the relationship between mom and dad. And then it has a section that is for third parties. So basically, it's if anyone else is influencing the system, like grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. And it's a map. And so the reason we created it, we didn't realize how powerful it was, but we created it actually to communicate with each other as therapists. So like if I was out and let's say that the family transitioned to another therapist, all they have to do is pull this one sheet out and it has all the dynamics in the family system. They don't have to start from scratch. They know everything that's going on, from the roles the kids play to the ability of the parents to get along, the flexibility, the inflexibility. It's awesome. And so it was something we've always talked about as therapists, but we never mapped them out. And so I created a map with my team, and we use that with our divorce families. And so we're actually going to train on that in Galveston, I think, next month to a bunch of family therapists about how to use this map so that they can map out the family system. So that way they provide the appropriate intervention as a result.
Is it going to be recorded, and will you post a video about it?
Oh, I wish. They won't. So it's actually for the Texas Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. They will not allow us to record. They keep all of it because it's under their umbrella. And so I won't be able to record it, but I'm not opposed to redoing that for professionals. It's really to train clinicians. It's training counselors. And we did a 13-minute, which I can share this because we created it, but we did a 13-minute counseling session where two of our therapists on our team played the parents, and then one of the other therapists plays the kid, and then our receptionist played the other kid. And it was a family of conflict, divorce family of high conflict. And I was the therapist in 13 minutes showing how to pull it all together, right, from the whole start of it. And so that was really fun. We're going to actually show that at the conference, at TMFT conference, in the training to show the therapists how do you map a family and to give them an example in real time as they're watching the conflict and going, oh, I got that, check, check, check.
And that's not on YouTube.
No, I know, right?
Yeah.
It's not on YouTube. We're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with it, but we're going to go present it, I think, next month. I think it's next month. It could be a month or 2 months. I got to go back and look at the date, but I think it's next month that we do that in Galveston. So,
well, time is flying so fast. Thank you, Michael, for being
You're welcome.
here. Can you please explain and tell us where to find you, how to find you? And one thing I didn't understand in the beginning, if people who are watching on my channel would like to schedule co-parenting counseling, not court ordered, just to talk to you, would they be able to do it?
Yes, so they can definitely reach out and I can give some guidance. I can't provide them therapy yet until I'm either licensed in California or the compact happens, which is all the states are getting together to try to make it to where you can choose a therapist across the board anywhere, hopefully in the U.S. That's not completed yet because there's a bunch of legal things that have to be done. But what I could do for people that call that are maybe based in California or any other state absent Texas, they can definitely reach out to us so we can tell them the resources, how to select a counselor, those kinds of things. So that's the best way to find us. So you can find us on our website at brighterpossibilitiesfc.com. You can reach us if you call, it's 817-924-2732. And those are the best two ways to reach us. You can go to our podcast. That is Embracing Change. Beyond Divorce, Embracing Change is the podcast. And get a lot of information there. And you can communicate with us through that as well. Because that's probably the best way to start.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.